Hello, welcome back to the channel 12-Step Guide with Troy O. Today we are going to begin Step 7 of Alcoholics Anonymous out of the book 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. We did Step 7 out of the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book last video, if you haven't had a chance to review that. So this is truly an exciting step, and why is that? Well, what are you seeking to achieve is at the heart of this step. So step 7, some notes I have, is living in the solution. We are building our new life, eliminating things in us we find objectionable. For by now the obsession has likely been removed. We are letting go of our failures and moving toward success. Many have had a spiritual awakening. So what is step 7? Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Him being the God of your understanding. In meetings, I found this step exhausting to read. And much of the reason was my struggle to grasp the meaning of one concept, one definition, and because I failed to grab a hold of that, I struggled to apply it to some of what else was being said. I discovered others perhaps also struggled with this. So, and that word is humility. So I'm going to do my best to define that for you as we progress. The less you're struggling to understand that word, the easier it is to understand concepts being spoken about. So I'm going to start the reading. This is page 70, step 7. And I'm actually going to read the first paragraph, and then I'm going to read the very last paragraph. And the reason I'm going to start there is the last paragraph has some very important information that in a meeting, by the time we got there, I was just mentally exhausted and failed to really consider maybe what was being said there. Well, we're going to consider it right off the bat, and then we'll progress on and see if we can derive some great meaning out of what Bill wrote here. Step 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings, and we're going to come back to that also. Since this step so specifically, precisely, concerns itself with humility, we should pause here to consider what humility is and what the practice to do again and again, what the practice of it can mean to us. So right off the bat, I'm going right to the last paragraph. The 7th step is where we make the change in our attitude, which permits us, with humility as our guide, to move out from ourselves toward others and toward God. The whole emphasis of step 7 is on humility. It is really saying to us that we now ought to be willing to try humility in seeking the removal of our other shortcomings, the problems in us we find objectionable, just as we did when we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol. That's step 1. And came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 2. If that degree of humility could enable us So there was some humility in step 1 and 2, our first basic understanding, taking those steps. If that degree of humility could enable us to find the grace by which such a deadly obsession could be banished, to be cast out, now that obsession, that banishment happened in step 7, then there must be hope of the same result respecting any other problem we could possibly have. So, step 7 has to do with addressing our primary obsession, our step 1, but also those other areas we find objectionable. Some of them may be the drivers which fed our addiction. So, humbly asked him, not arrogant or self-important, that humbly, open-minded, meek, not running the show. We set a plan in motion and participate in the process via a request to somewhere, to him, and backed by this plan which we understand. So humbly asked him. Let's look at him a little bit deeper. Whatever power that made us in such a way where we can choose to grow into our greatest potential and participate in that process. To remove represents something leaving us, and something new is replacing it. There's two perspectives to that shortcomings. Those things within us we find objectionable and want removed. We're very much a part of this plan. In the earlier videos, you understand how you get to this point. Now, Bill's first step 7 experience was a product of both formal and natural. In step 6, we looked at Bill's story where he touched on step 6. It would have been identified. I identified it then as track 1 in his story of 2 different tracks. That track, which we talked about also in step 5, that comes from step 4 through 5, up through 6 and 7. He prayed in 3 when he got to the hospital. He knew he wanted what EBT had. That was clear in his story. We covered that. He moved in that direction with Ebby's guidance at the hospital via step 4 and 5 that EBT of the Oxford groups helped him with. He prayed for that willingness in that track A of track B. Call it track 1, track 2, track A, track B. It's the same. The obsession to drink fell from Bill, as we see in his story when he says, I haven't had a drink since. And that was backed up with his long-term sober history. The obsession fell from Bill as a result of doing steps 3, 4, 5, and 6. In Bill's case, step 7 was a surprise. And we got into that at the hospital where he was floating around the hospital and asking the doctor if there was something the matter with him, because he was having this remarkable spiritual experience that we got into in the past. Bill also admits it doesn't happen this quickly for all. It certainly isn't going to happen that quickly if you're stuck on the early steps. If you're not doing these higher steps to get the results, it's going to be a challenge to get there. But it also wasn't his first hospitalization, and he reports he had long since taken step one. It didn't come from the Oxford groups. He knew he had a problem with alcohol. Hey, look, at the first time you go into the hospital, if you don't know you got a problem with alcohol, you're at a treatment center, maybe there is something the matter. Anyway, we will have additional opportunity to understand this process as we seek to remove other issues. We'll get a deeper understanding of this as we focus on other issues. Step 7, the drink is a real focused event. We start on step 1 and 2 and really target that first. But at some point, hopefully, we start trying to address some of the other issues that we find objectionable. Also, we'll come back to this a little bit today. So now I'm going to continue on with the reading. Second paragraph just at the beginning of step 7. Indeed, the attainment to achieve a goal of greater humility is the foundation principle, a stable framework of each of AA's 12 steps. For without some degree of humility, the passion for something to replace the passion for alcohol, maybe. No alcoholic can stay sober at all. Nearly all AAs have found, too, that unless they develop much more of this precious, this valuable quality than may be required just for sobriety, they still haven't much chance of becoming truly happy. Without it, they cannot live too much useful purpose. Maybe some higher reasoning to succeed, or in adversity, in real difficulty, or in real misfortune, be able to summon the faith that can meet any emergency. Humility, as a word and as an ideal, best possible future outcome, has a very bad time of it in our world. Not only is the idea misunderstood, the word itself is often intensely disliked, much hated. Many people haven't even a nodding acquaintance. They don't even have a superficial understanding with humility as a way of life. So humility as a way of life. I'm going to stop mid paragraph because we're going to pick it up from there with a different example that I want to make sure really delivers. So Bill admits here, humility is something many people, they don't understand, and we haven't yet really gotten into a definition. So before we continue the reading, let's really try to understand this word humility. Humility as a way of life. We're going to look at two different views, an expanded view and a tight view. Now, these are off of notes. That's what I'm covering. So a basic definition: realistic outlook or clear recognition of who and what we really are, followed by an honest and sincere attempt to become what we could be. A very similar, very close to that definition Bill provided earlier. But let's look at it in the context of the 12 steps first, this expanded view. Step 1 through 6 is the first part of this true humility, a realistic outlook of who and what we really are. We're seeking to discover that, to change that, to find the parts of us that we don't like, and to find our strengths. That being a realistic outlook, a clear recognition of who and what we really are. Now, steps 7 through 12 is the second part of humility, which focuses on an honest and sincere attempt to become what we could be. Now, as we evolve, what I can be becomes what I am, and anew, what could be becomes visible as a result of working the higher steps. This new insight and tighter view of humility is measured at step 6. This is a tighter view. Who am I? That's a real tight view. The expanded view is 1 through 6, leading up to this tighter view. This tighter view we may look at with other defects that we may have identified. In step 7, in that tight view, what I set in motion to be. Both sides of that, things being removed, but things replacing it. A weaker part of ourselves is simply replaced via advancement. A simple example, you graduate from school, that's an advancement. You get a better job, that's an advancement. These are just basic natural examples, if you will. Maybe you get into a relationship which makes you stronger together. Maybe you're improving your reading skills. That's a big one in recovery. A lot of people come into recovery, they feel the humiliation in the past of not knowing how to read, and they put great effort in and learn how to read and feel the benefits from that. It's a true step 6 and 7 gift. Maybe working with others, step 7, but right, it's up to step 12, but it enhances your step 7. Overcoming failure is the view in early 12-step development, but step 7 can transform more into measuring real success based on true humility as we grow. So it's really that point of change. Again, who you are trying to be becomes who you are. Things get replaced. You get stronger. Certainly the reverse of that, pursuing alcohol, the failures, continuing to pursue those negative challenges is a different direction that slowly or quickly replaces us and we become something different in a negative direction. I hope that was helpful. We're going to continue on with the reading. This particular part of the reading starts to make a point, and the point is easily missed the way it's written. So I'll explain it. It's regarding alcoholic thinking. So page 70, third paragraph, down like mid-paragraph. Much of the everyday talk we hear, and a great deal of what we read, highlights man's pride in his own achievements. So certainly this is about pride, who we are and what we achieve can be very different. But Bill's building up to a greater point here. And certainly pride can be an issue, but that's much of what can be propelled in society. So, next paragraph. With great intelligence, that intelligence is the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skill. So with great intelligence, men of science have been forcing nature to disclose her secrets. The immense, the many, resources now being harnessed to be obtained promise such a quantity of material blessings that many have come to believe that a man made millennium lies just ahead. A man made millennium, that's a utopia. Great happiness and prosperity lies just ahead for us all. Poverty will disappear, they believe. This is back in 1952. And there will be such abundance, such large quantity, that everybody can have all the security and personal satisfactions he desires. The theory seems to be that once everybody's primary instincts are satisfied, there won't be much left to quarrel about. The world will then turn happy and be free to concentrate on culture and character. Solely by their own intelligence and labor, men will have shaped their own destiny. Suddenly, jealousy is going to disappear, and nobody will be too prideful, right? And oh, you didn't get the girl, that's okay. Maybe I'll get the next one. Oh, you didn't get the job, that's all right. All this is going to disappear. We're all set. Some man-made utopia because of some great achievements and the scientists are producing some great thing. But there's more. We're building up to a real point here. In the, there's another piece to that. So this utopia, what's that? We're all going to achieve early retirement and a fixed income, right? That's so the efforts of these other people, everything's going to be great. We're going to retire early and in a fixed income. So first, I want to visit the elderly. Unresolved alcohol or drugs, other issues can catch up quickly when historically the job was the way to control consumption and the weekends were okay to consume. Someone's got a drinking problem, they go to work every day, keeps them in check maybe. Suddenly every day is Saturday. What happens when each day compares to the weekend? The alcoholic needs the pursuit of passion, which is evolving in nature. That's what the alcoholic needs, that to replace the addiction, which was devolving in nature. I was aware a long time ago that many elderly get stuck into this alcoholism and others don't see it because it gets hidden. They're not out and about so much. So early retirement on a fixed income for an alcoholic is a risky place to be. So let's learn more about what's going on here. So certainly no alcoholic and surely no member of AA wants to deprecate, to belittle material achievement. Don't want to belittle material success. Nor do we enter into debate with the many who still so passionately cling to the belief that to satisfy our basic natural desires is the main object of life. But we are, the R here is in italics, squigglies. It means business with it. But we are sure that no class of people in the world ever made a worse mess of trying to live by this formula than alcoholics. So, alcoholic thinking. One set of people are going to make great achievements so that another set of people can retire early on a fixed income. There's a huge imbalance to that type of alcoholic thinking. There's many other examples of alcoholic thinking where there's an imbalance. Things don't make sense. It doesn't really add up what The promises what you're chasing. Alcohol itself, hey, it was wonderful when it was wonderful, but man, when it turned against me, my goodness. For thousands of years, we have been demanding more than our share of security, prestige, that's kind of widespread admiration, and romance. When we seem to be succeeding, we drank to dream still greater dreams. Hey, big celebration. When we were frustrated, even in part, we drank for oblivion, blank to unconsciousness. Never was there enough of what we thought we wanted. In all these strivings, it's great effort. So many of them well intentioned. Our crippling handicap had been our lack of humility, this realistic outlook of who and what we are, and this honest and sincere attempt to become what we could be. We had lacked the perspective to see that character building and spiritual values had to come first. They had to keep us honest, keep us in check, keep the truth, and that material satisfactions were not the purpose of living. Quite characteristically, alcoholic thinking, we had gone all out in confusing the ends with the means. Instead of regarding the satisfactions of our material desires as the means by which we could live and function as human beings, we had taken these satisfactions to be the final end and aim of life. So there was an imbalance there, just barely. So I want to be able to get drunk and just please my little basic needs and take care of my own little piece of the world. And meanwhile, we were digressing. True, most of us thought good character, mental and moral qualities, was desirable, helpful, and preferred. Page 72. But obviously, good character was something one needed to get on with the business of being self satisfied. With a proper display of honesty and morality, that's right and wrong behavior, we'd stand a better chance of getting what we really wanted. So, believe that better to behave properly to achieve what we want. Got to hide those faults that we don't want others to see. But whenever we had to choose between character and comfort, the character building was lost in the dust of our chase after what we thought was happiness. Drinking, spending money, lying, whatever it took to be happy. Seldom did we look at character building, that's good thinking and behavior, as something desirable in itself, something we would like to strive for, work towards, whether our instinctual needs were met or not. So, those instinctual needs in this case relating to comfort and luxury, I think, rather that comfort and luxury was met or not. We never thought of making honesty, tolerance, and true love of man and God the daily basis of living. This lack of anchorage, a place suitable to drop anchor, to any permanent values. This is a judgment of importance. This blindness to the true purpose of our lives. What is our true purpose? Was it to be a drunk? Hopefully not. Produced another bad result. Our finest efforts led us into alcoholism. It's not our true purpose. It's not my true purpose. For just so long as we were convinced that we could live exclusively only by our own individual strength and intelligence, for just that long was a working faith of a higher power impossible. At what date, for example, question, did you stop believing a newborn needs others as an evolving idea? Just an evolving concept. For example, just a basic question, not in the book. This was true even when we believed that God existed. We could actually have earnest, strong, and clear religious beliefs which remained barren, barely or none, because we were still trying to play God ourselves, still trying to go it alone. We got all the answers. Me first, screw everybody else. Maybe things down those avenues. As long as we placed self reliance first, a genuine reliance, a real and honest effort upon a higher power, was out of the question. That basic ingredient of all humility, a desire to seek and do God's will, was missing. So let's take a closer look at what Bill's saying there. A desire to seek and do God's will was missing. Try to understand that some. So I'd like to take a crack at breaking this out, regardless of one's belief system. Desire to seek and do God's will. How about a desire to participate in our own evolutionary development and willingness to evolve, to be open to inspiration via internal inspiration or external input, to acknowledge that certain things make us stronger when embraced and other things make us weaker, to choose to seek and embrace that which makes us stronger, happier, and fulfilled, to realize we both, us and that which designed us, however we came to be, want the same things for us. It can be a joint venture. There's a lot of problems out there in the world, but we have these basic instincts to keep us alive, to keep us moving forward. We were built in such a way that however we came to be wants to see success. And we have a choice in that. To resolve, satisfy, and harness our basic instincts is not the end. It's the beginning, the sheer basics of those instincts to eat and breathe and some other stuff, pursue basic needs. It truly, it can be just the beginning. Too often we just strive for barely or get stuck. There are far greater dormant individual instincts, otherwise described as abilities or gifts, in us waiting to be unlocked. Instincts built into our evolution, waiting for us to uncover them. It's going to be very difficult to uncover them with alcohol and drugs. I learned a lot about survival. I had some gifts there, but that didn't have to be. Now, regardless of our belief systems, are we helpless? We were provided the ability to evolve, to understand our evolutionary skills and what we want for our future offspring, family, and society. An active ingredient to awaken this process is the ability to learn from others. Do you want to do it the easy way, or would you like to do it the hard way? Humility allows us to remain in awe regarding life's possibilities and the role we can play. Meekness and spirit, not arrogant and prideful. Emphasis on who I am, followed by an honest and sincere attempt to become what we could be. Moving on in the reading. For us, the process of gaining a new perspective, a change in our view, change in our thinking, was unbelievably painful. It was only by repeated humiliations that we were forced to learn something about humility, to get right sized. That humiliation, shame, disgrace, to be dishonored. It was only at the end of a long road marked by successive defeats and humiliations, in the final crushing of our self sufficiency. That self sufficiency is our finest efforts blew up in our face and affected those around us, maybe shamed, embarrassed, mortified, dishonored, discredited, disgraced. It wasn't because life was great that we began to feel humility of something more than a condition of groveling despair. I'm a piece of shit. Every newcomer in Alcoholics Anonymous is told, and soon realizes for himself, that his humble admission of powerlessness over alcohol is his first step toward liberation from its paralyzing grip. The reason we finally get to admitting step one, hopefully, to achieve some freedom. So it is that we first see humility as a necessity. But this is the barest beginning, it's the smallest beginning. To get completely away from our aversion, our strong dislike to the idea of being humble, to gain a vision of humility as the avenue to true freedom of the human spirit, to be willing to work for humility as something to be desired for itself, takes most of us a long, long time. A whole lifetime geared to self centeredness. That's putting only yourself first, pains you to consider others. Cannot be set in reverse all at once. Rebellion, resistance, dogs our every step at first. When we have finally admitted without reservation that we were powerless over alcohol, that's without ability or power, we are apt to breathe a great sigh of relief, saying, well, thank God that's over. I'll never have to go through that again. Then we learn, often to our consternation, to our anxiety or surprise, that this is only the first milestone on the new road we are walking. So let's take a look at what he's saying there. So in step one, we used a process of humility, but at great cost. This great cost likely came first. It did for me. I had to be beaten down terribly. before I was willing to try another way. And this is a great move towards the direction of humility. Who and what I really was, followed by an honest and sincere attempt to become what I could be. Now, this is about step 7, and future shortcomings don't have to meet this level of failure first. We can use the steps to identify these problems and address them, lest they boomerang back onto us and we find ourselves crying to buckets for comfort. Look, at just because you put the drink down or drugs down doesn't make everything all better. Money issues, for example, thinking, relationships, pride, all kinds of goodies that we can address, drivers that can really set us back and hurt those around us. How about acceptance? I struggle to understand. You got to accept your alcoholism. I was like, what the hell does that even mean? I just struggled to quite get that. But let's take a little crack at it. You didn't just wake up one day with no prior history or knowledge and decide you're just suddenly alcoholic. You just woke up, but had one little sip. Oh, I'm alcoholic. It don't work that way. If you have consumed something that makes you sick, you just don't have it again. It's as simple as that. You don't. It doesn't drive you around and run your life, for example. So anyway, for many, we began step 1 long before AA or treatment. We began the process, started suspecting maybe there's a problem. Maybe we knew we had a problem, but didn't care to do something about it. I don't want to be alcoholic. I don't want to stop drinking. Acceptance. After that long road of math where we suspected and fought it and all the I'll just drink beer instead of the hard stuff. I'll do this, only drink on the weekends, whatever the case is, or drugs or whatever you. Step 1 is you just replace. Some people, maybe it doesn't drink a drug at all. You replace those things with what does fit you, what sets your mind off in some cases to get maybe the endorphins in your brain working or other chemicals that get you all screwed up. Acceptance came on the day we cared enough to do something about it. Just because you admit, finally, I'm an alcoholic, doesn't suddenly mean you're going to stop drinking. The question really is, do you care enough to do anything about it? Many people that relapse, they don't suddenly relapse because they suddenly stop being alcoholic. Something else was going on. Somehow they stopped caring, and even that isn't necessarily the best description. Something happened. What happened? For the relapse, or what happened? That answer isn't at step 1. So about this admitting a problem with alcohol or drugs. What took so long? There's some questions out there now. Those are step 4 and 5 kinds of questions, right? What took so long? Why did you fight it? What was it offering you? What did you think you were giving up, or what were you giving up? What was it doing for you? Have you gotten off the ride? Maybe you're thinking about it. Can you learn from the experience of others? There's some real true humility, learning from others. And this is maybe some advanced step 1, because step 1's a historical look. So Maybe you uh, change the view of step one. Maybe you're looking at the view this way as a pen, right? And you change the view and you start looking at it this way and it looks different. What was that process? Because, and I'm going somewhere with this in seven, because people suddenly maybe admit step one, or maybe the first day you went to a meeting was really the admission. If you feel like your obsession to drink was removed at step one, or you feel like that's where you put the drink down or kept it down, then look further back at your history to an earlier time when you questioned if you had a drinking problem, roots which caused you to go to AA or treatment. And what I'm trying to do here is get you to see the natural process. A lot might believe, oh, it was step one they did all that. No, step six and seven, you start moving things around a little bit and see that, wow, I really was at that for a while. I really reasoned that out for a while. That reasoning out, am I an alcoholic? That was step four and five. It's just a natural process, not a formal. It's just a natural process. You have to reason stuff out, and maybe some six, and maybe your step seven really was to go to step one. But with other problems, you can be at six and seven, and you can deal with those other problems. Step seven is truly a remarkable place to be. Moving on. Still goaded, provoked by sheer necessity, we reluctantly, hesitantly come to grips with those serious character flaws that made problem drinkers of us in the first place. Flaws which must be dealt with to prevent a retreat into alcoholism once again. We will want to be rid of some of these defects, but in some instances, this will appear to be an impossible job from which we recoil, and we cling with a passionate persistence, a desperate need, to others which are just as disturbing to our equilibrium, the mind and body balance. So we're clinging to these other character defects because we still enjoy them too much. Simple as that. Maybe lusting, lust. Maybe you're married, but you're lusting, or whatever, in a relationship, whatever the case is. How can we possibly summon the resolution and the willingness to get rid of such overwhelming compulsions, overpowering urges, and desires, maybe cravings? But again, we are driven on by the inescapable conclusion, undeniable reasoning, which we draw from AA experience, that we surely must. Now we're going on to page 74. Must try with a will, an intent backed by action, or else fall by the wayside. At this stage of our progress, we are under heavy pressure and coercion, under duress. This is early recovery, to do the right thing. We are obliged, compelled, to choose between the pains of trying and the certain penalties of failing to do so. So, this is really recapping our early step one. There's a reason why he's recapping step one and the humility that came from that, from having to admit defeat, and how that plays into step seven. We can work this stuff out a different way so it isn't defeating us. These initial steps along the road are taken grudgingly. We don't want to. Yet, we do take them. We may still have no very good opinion of humility as a desirable personal virtue, as a good quality, but we do recognize it is a necessary aid to our survival. Second paragraph, we're going to get into step 4, 5, and 6 here. But when we have taken a square look at some of these defects, have discussed them with another, step 4 and 5, and have become willing to have them removed, step 6, our thinking about humility starts to have a wider meaning. When we did that work, okay, when we did that step 4, 5, and 6, it brought on a new meaning, not when we were stuck on earlier steps. It makes a difference. It truly does. By this time, in all probability, we have gained some measure of release from our more devastating handicaps. Some of that stuff has fallen from us. A natural step 7. We enjoy moments in which there is something like real peace of mind. To those of us who have hitherto, so far, known only excitement, depression, or anxiety, in other words, to all of us, this newfound peace is a priceless gift. Something new indeed has been added. Where humility had formerly stood for a forced feeding on humble pie, I'm a piece of shit, that realization that I had to come to, it now begins to mean the nourishing ingredients which can give us serenity, give us success, replaces failure. This improved perception, this improved view of humility starts another revolutionary change, a major change in our outlook. Our eyes begin to open to the immense, the huge values which have come straight out of painful ego puncturing, this critical self evaluation. Until now, our lives have been largely devoted to running from pain and problems. We fled from them as from a plague. We never wanted to deal with the fact of suffering. Escape via the bottle was always our solution. Character building, that's self improvement from mistakes or failures. Character building through suffering might be all right for saints, but it certainly didn't appeal to us. Then in AA, we looked and listened. It's page 75. Everywhere we saw failure and misery transformed by humility. So here's some important values in humility, this transformation. Transformed by humility into priceless assets. We heard story after story of how humility had brought strength out of weakness. In every case, pain had been the price of admission into a new life. But this admission price had purchased more than we expected. It brought a measure of humility, which we soon discovered to be a healer of pain. We began to fear pain less and desire humility more than ever. During this process of learning more about humility, the most profound result of all was the change in our attitude towards God. And this was true whether we had been believers or unbelievers. We began to get over the idea that the higher power was a sort of Bush League pinch hitter to be called upon only in an emergency. I'll let you know when I need you. The notion that we would still live our own lives, God helping a little now and then, began to evaporate. Many of us who had thought ourselves religious awoke to the limitations of this attitude, refusing to place God first. We had deprived ourselves of his help. But now the words, "Of myself I am nothing, the Father doeth the works," began to carry bright promise and meaning. Now, open up your mouth wide, because that's going to be a big piece of humble pie to take down. I'm kidding you. You don't have to fight this concept. Let's take a stronger look at what's going on here from two different perspectives. So, of myself I am nothing, the Father doeth the works. Might there be any time in history that you could consider as some type of a model to consider? I believe to understand this statement, one needs only to see a newborn baby to understand how fragile we can be, and our first introduction to this concept. A power greater than us at the time would have been adults, and our perfect instincts. What's that? To breathe and to eat did the work while we got stronger. This is a concept. Living in this conceptual truth can keep us sober. We can build on this truth. If it was true then, perhaps it's true now. As we align ourselves with others, we can be stronger. Look at, by default, the body is aging, but abuse of alcohol, drugs, and other behaviors can inhibit mental and emotional growth. We have to choose to develop our gifted abilities and evolutionary potential as part of our humanity. Those perfect instincts, the ones that to breathe and eat, those are just the basics. It's incredible what awaits in you to be awoken, that is something that you could really appreciate and strengthen you. And there can be this fear, what's this God's will for me, for example. The gifts that you have will align. May not feel good up front if you think is your gift to drink. Having to give that up might be a difficult concept. Maybe there's other stuff you don't know what awaits you. So I hope you found that helpful. Don't fight it. There really is a model out there that you have experienced already that you can build on. Are you evolving or devolving? Are you achieving a better character and moral ethic, or instead achieving moral failure? True humility allows us to choose to grow by placing ourselves in the care of others who are also aspiring toward recovery. This can happen in AA or other 12-step programs as part of the recovery process. It can happen in a church environment that fits your needs, counseling, or it can even happen at the Department of Corrections under a credible recovery program. Your circumstances might be difficult, but if there's others around who want similar as you in this recovery process, there's a saying in the 12-step meetings, it takes only two to have a meeting. This works if we work at resolving our failures and embracing our successes. So there's another part to this. This is speaking to Bill. All right. So let's look at it again because now we're going to look at Bill's experience. Bill's also talking about himself here. By now, the words of myself, I am nothing, the Father doeth the work, began to carry bright promise and meaning. What I want to do is I want to go over to the big book for a second. Bill's story, where he took steps 3 through 6, and this bright promise was a result of that. So we know Bill's at the hospital. I've read this before. All right, so and then he takes 3. This would be page 22 in the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. There's some specific language that he's going to align here, and I just want you to see that this relates to him so you have a working example. There I humbly offered myself to God. He was very desperate. Things were coming out of EBT's mouth that made sense. As I then understood him, to do with me as he would, I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. Now, this is Bill's experience. I admitted for the first time that, and here's the language, of myself, I was nothing. That without him, I was lost. It's very similar to of myself, I am nothing, the Father doeth the works. So what does he mean by the Father doeth the works here? So I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend. So he's just described steps 4, 5, and now 6. Take them away, root and branch. So what's the bright new promise and took new meaning? I have not had a drink since. It was step 7. For Bill, this is the language. He hadn't had a drink since. This is the gift of recovery. This gift that somehow this process resulted in something happening, a power greater than Bill doing for him what he couldn't do for himself. This happened to me also. I would describe it differently. I didn't do the steps this way, but I understand the concept. I see the steps. I see where this happened. I see the work that I put into it to invite that to happen, to work together on this process. I'd like to talk to others in other 12-step programs or people that haven't had these devastating things happen to them. True humility suggests they don't have to. You can learn from others. If you know that problems are developing, you can get off the ride. In some of the next part that I'm going to read can speak to some of that. We saw we needn't always be bludgeoned and beaten into humility. It could come quite as much from our voluntary reaching for it as it could from unremitting suffering, constant suffering. A great turning point in our lives came when we sought for humility as something we really wanted rather than something we must have. And that's in italics, this wretched thing that we don't want, but we're getting it. It marked the time when we could begin to see the full implication of step 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Last page. As we approach the actual taking of step 7, it might be well if we AAs inquire once more just what our deeper objectives are. What are our goals? What are you trying to achieve? Know where you're headed so that the higher power, people in your life can help you with that. And you can help yourself better if there's not conflict in what you're trying to achieve. Each of us would like to live at peace with himself and with his fellows. We would like to be assured that the grace of God can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. We have seen that character defects based upon short-sighted or unworthy desires, vague, hazy, unnecessary, are the obstacles that block our path toward these objectives, towards these goals. We now clearly see that we have been making unreasonable demands upon ourselves, upon others, and upon God. If you make unreasonable demands, they're bound to fail. If you put a lot of effort into something that's going to fail, the outcome is rarely going to be good. The chief trigger of our defects has been self-centered fear. Remember that fear list is understanding fear, understanding the way fear works and how it wraps itself around your wants and needs and desires and interests and addiction. And it takes some effort to understand just how that fear operates. Primarily fear that we would lose something we already possessed, already have, or would fail to get something we demanded. Living upon a basis of unsatisfied demands, we were in a state of continual disturbance and frustration. We were unhappy. Therefore, no peace was to be had unless we could find a means of reducing these demands, getting right-sized. The difference between a demand and a simple request is plain to anyone. Now we're at that last paragraph that I thought very important. The seventh step is where we make the change in our attitude. So we're participating here in changing our attitude, our thoughts, attitudes, actions. It's a big deal, which permits us, with humility as our guide, to move out from ourselves toward others and toward God. Take an interest in our fellow man. It can show up at the program in 12-step recovery. The whole emphasis of step 7 is on humility. It is really saying to us that we now ought to be willing to try humility in seeking the removal of our other shortcomings. Just as we did when we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol and came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. If that degree of humility could enable us to find the grace by which such a deadly obsession could be banished, that drink or drug problem, then there must be hope of the same result respecting any other problem we could possibly have. Things that might be driving us. So that's the end of step 7. I do hope that I have presented to you today in meekness. I'm not seeking to force this at anyone. There's no fight. You find what works for you. Your belief system, your thinking, your attitude, your actions, understanding true humility, moving in that direction. I believe we're just scratching the surface of step 6 and 7. I do. I'm the beginning of Bill's revelation. As I was in the program, there was a considerable emphasis on step 1. If we could get the program to place that considerable emphasis on 6 and 7, where the real magic happens, it could have a great impact on recovery as a whole, on humanity. What a gift that I haven't had to drink all these years, that I learned how to resolve my problems, how to live this life not all jammed up. It's truly a considerable process. It's a gift to the people that can learn how to do it, so that you're not just encountering all these potholes everywhere, so that just one problem after the next after the next. 12-step recovery has had a significant impact on my life and on many others, guiding us towards something greater within us. Remember earlier in the message, the prideful success, and then the scientists leading towards others that could retire early with this minimum pay, this belief that somehow this is going to happen and we're all going to just be happy, joyous, and free, and the alcoholic thinking to that. The alcoholic needs to pursue a passion other than alcohol. Just seems to be the way it is. Which Bill would you rather be? The one that was dying at home, or the one that's living into exceptionalism? Bill W. He presented us two different ways of life. And avoid the alcoholic thinking, pursue the passion, care about your fellow man, and have a nice day. Thank you.
If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Ring the bell to be notified when new content is added. Also, you can support the channel 12-Step Guide with Troyo by donating through PayPal to hsworldservice@yahoo.com. In Step 7, we humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Step 7 represents new beginnings where recovery is achievable. With the aid of our higher power, we can move beyond our failures and begin living in the solution. We are empowered to make an honest and sincere attempt to become what we could be. We shift our focus to building a new life without the obsession we identified in Step 1.